But I thought that was very profound. This is why people go psycho. This is why people go crazy because of this reason right here. Hey, what's going on, family? Welcome back to the podcast. Before we jump into our podcast, I just want to say thank you guys for joining me once again. I pray that you guys are having a great and awesome week. Listen, this week on the podcast, I want to have a conversation about something I heard in a video where some brothers was having a discussion about being successful in, the major areas of our lives, spiritually, physically, financially, mentally. And as they were having this conversation, one of the brothers said something that was very, very powerful. And I really wanted to share it this week on the podcast because I felt like a lot of the stuff we've been talking about the last couple months on the podcast, on the YouTube channel, I felt like it tied in totally to what we've been discussing. And when he began to say what he started to say, and I'm getting ready to read it in a second, in my mind, I'm like, where's he going with this, right? But it ended up being a very powerful saying and confirmation to a lot of things we've been talking about. But listen to what he says. He said, this is why people go psycho. This is why people go crazy. You're going psycho because you're saying you want one thing, but you are living a different way and it's driving you crazy. And in my mind, I'm like, oh my goodness, just so many different things started going through my mind personally for my own self, but also for a lot of stuff that we talked about and a lot of conversations that I have with people, a lot of dialogue that I hear online. It's like my brain is running now. He goes on to say, in other words, you're doing or saying one thing, but you want something else. And I thought that was super powerful. I thought it was being brutally honest because, sometimes we don't want to hear stuff like that. But when you really process it, and I'll give you guys time to process it. But when you really sit back and think about what he says, listen, this is what's driving you mad, right? This is what has your mind going the way that it's been going and having you feeling like you're going crazy and out of your mind. He says, listen, you're doing one thing, but you want something else. And this is what's causing you to be this way. And I thought it would be profound to talk about double-mindedness, right? And they touched on it a little bit in their conversation because we know the Bible talks about a double-minded man, and we'll read that scripture in a second. But if you follow the podcast, if you follow our YouTube channel, maybe this is your first time hearing our podcast, maybe you're not watching on YouTube. If you are watching on YouTube, we would appreciate if you would click that subscribe button and click the bell. It'll notify you every time we have discussions like this. Share, like the video. And if you're on one of the podcasting platforms and you're listening by audio or whatever have you, if you want to join our YouTube channel, it is youtube.com/Trevor L. Pope. But if you've been already a follower of the channel, a follower of the podcast, we've been talking a lot about not only about purpose, but we've been talking, a lot about, the battlefield that we have in our mind, right? And a couple of episodes that we had on our YouTube channel that I talked about this, and you can go and check it out, and we'll have some links in the description on our YouTube channel. But one was unlock mental freedom and renew your mind with spiritual wisdom. Another one was transforming your mind, understanding Romans 12:1-2. Another topic we had was be who God created you to be. And when you think of those three different topics, it all deals with the mind, right? It all deals with how we process stuff, how we think about stuff. Even when we're looking at somebody else's life and how they're living, it's like, how are we processing that? How are we thinking about that? How are we seeing that? And we talked about in one of those episodes how sometimes in the one when we talked about you being who God created you to be, it's like you're processing looking at somebody else's life as if their life is better or they're doing something much greater than you, something that you can't do. But it's not about you doing what they're doing. It's about you being who God created you to be the 100% person that you are supposed to be. And then you'll have that joy, that peace of mind, all of the things that come with that, right? But I wanted to share this and I wanted to read that scripture dealing with a double-minded person because this is what I see a lot happen in my own life. I see happen in friends' lives. I see happen with people online is that we say we want to do one thing, but we're not actually doing what it is to get to that specific destination, right? We're doing something totally different, expecting a different result, and in the process of it, it is driving us crazy, right? Or it's stressing us out. It got us down. But a lot of you are not going to want to hear this. No, I don't want to say that. Some of you may want to hear the truth, right? Some of you may want me to be brutally honest with you, and some of you may not. But the bottom line is a lot of times the problems that we are having in our lives, a lot of the destinations that we're not getting to is because of us. But I want to read this scripture to you, right? James chapter 1, verses 7 through 8. But I thought that was very profound. This is why people go cycle. This is why people go crazy because of this reason right here. James 1 and 7 says, "For let not that man think that he shall receive anything of the Lord." Verse 8, "A double-minded man is unstable in all his ways." And when you go back and read James chapter 1, it talks about somebody praying or asking something of the Lord, but not truly believing that that thing is going to happen, right? And that's why verse 7 goes on to say, "For let not that man think that he shall receive anything of the Lord. A double-minded man is unstable in all his ways." Now we know here in this particular scripture is talking about spiritually, right? But how many know it's the same thing in the natural, right? And it starts in the spiritual first, right? Like you can't say you want one thing, but you find yourself doing something totally opposite, for that thing to happen. Like, let's deal with weight loss, for example, right? Many people say, "Oh, I want to lose weight. They know what it is that they need to do to lose weight, but they're eating differently, right? They're not really exercising, but yet they're stressing about it, but yet they're depressed about it. But it's nothing that the external force is doing, right? It's something that's happening internally. It's something that's going on with them. And we got to get to the point of where we are no longer our own worst enemy, right? Like our mind have to line up with what we're saying that we desire to happen in our life. Listen to what a definition of being double-minded is or says. It says essentially, double-mindedness refers to lack of commitment. Now listen to this: lack of commitment or consistency in one's thoughts, beliefs, and actions. A double-minded believer, this is on the spiritual note, right? A double-minded believer may claim to follow God, but struggle to fully surrender to him, right? Or surrender their life to him. So on the spiritual side, we may say, listen, I'm a follower of God. I love Jesus. I'm following after Christ, but we're not fully surrendering. We're not fully giving him everything that he's asking for, right? The things that he's asking us to give up, the things that he's asking us to walk away from, we're not fully surrendering that, right? When it comes to a spiritual and a salvation level, right? But when you look at even before that, when it talks about when you're double-minded, you lack consistency in your thoughts, beliefs, and that last one that's super important is our actions, right? If you go back in the book of James and you look in this same book, he talks about faith without works is dead, right? One will say, "I'll show you my faith by my works," but the other one will say, "I'll show you my works by my faith." And it's like, no, you have to put your hand into something. You have to be doing something. There has to be some type of action behind the thing that it is that you are saying that you desire, right? You can't just sit and say, "I want this to happen. I want to lose weight, but I'm going to eat however I want to eat. I'm not going to exercise. I'm just going to do whatever I want to." That's not going to happen. You can't say, "Listen, I want to have some type of wealth, but every single dollar you're getting, you're spending," right? You're not investing it in nothing. You're not learning how to invest it into something, because a lot of this stuff, a lot of, where we're trying to get to and the things we desire to do and have, a lot of it is just education. It's just information, right? It's not that it's not out there. I mean, now with the internet being so vast and you can pretty much go on on YouTube or Google certain things and pretty much find out about anything nowadays, right? So the information is there, but a lot of times the action isn't there. But yet we'll say that we desire to get to Z, from A, but we're not doing what it takes to walk that alphabet, if you know what I mean, right? So being in that state of mind, seeing one thing, but living out something else, it can definitely drive us crazy, right? It can definitely bring us to the point of depression. And when you're not being honest with yourself, when you're blaming somebody else for why you are not where you're supposed to be, it's a lot easier to stay in that state. Because if it's somebody else's fault, then in your mind, that means that, well, it's not my fault. So I don't have any responsibility in this. I don't have to do anything. I just need to wait on God until he fixes it. And a lot of times God is saying, no, it's not anybody else's fault. It's your fault. I know what you said that you would like to do. I know where it is that you would like to be. That path is paved. That door is open, but you got to walk through that door. You got to twist the knob. You got to walk that path. When we think about the children of Israel, and when God says, listen, this enemy that, you had, Pharaoh and him being ruler over you in Egypt and all that, he says, one day you're not going to see this enemy no more. But if you go back and you go to the book of Exodus, I believe it's chapter 4, God says to them, listen, first and foremost, you got to get to the place where this is going to happen, right? He tells them to listen, move forward and see the salvation of the Lord, see the saving power, the rescuing of the Lord. You can't stay right here and expect to, get the results that you desire. No, the results is in moving to the place of where I'm telling you to move to. And it wasn't until their backs was against the wall, they had nowhere to go. God opens up the Red Sea, they walk through, the enemies try to come through and God swallows them up, right? But if they had not went to that place of where the Red Sea was going to open, then how were they going to get delivered from their enemies? So the question is, if you are not moving where God is telling you to move, if you're not doing what it is that you have to do to get to the place where you need to be, how do you expect those results, right? Yeah, and you can't. And that goes to show that you are double-minded, right? There are times that I have to be honest with myself. I am double-minded. I started on a weight loss journey at the beginning of the year. I think I'm down 30, maybe 35 pounds, but in all honesty, I should be down at least another 15 or 20 more pounds. But guess why I am not down that? Because there's times where I got stagnated. Thank God I didn't go backwards and start to gain, but I got stagnated. I kind of plateaued, but I can make excuses up like, oh, they say, you're going to plateau at certain points and all that. Not saying that doesn't happen, but looking at my own life, I know why I plateaued, right? I stopped doing certain things that I was doing when I had knocked off the 30, 35, right? I started eating, I was eating sugar-free cookies when, when I wanted a sweet, but now I'm back to the Oreos or the Chips Ahoy. So, you got to be honest with yourself. So I can't sit and look in the mirror and see my stomach and say, oh man, I wish it was smaller, or get down like it should be smaller, when I'm not doing what it is that I need to do to get it to that point. And I think that's what a lot of people struggle with. And I thank God for this brother that was talking about this in this conversation, and for him saying this, because this is him being brutally honest, with the people that were listening to their conversation. And I'm going to read it once again, and we're going to close out the podcast, because I really want you to get this, and I want you to be honest with yourself about it. Once again, he says, this is why people go psycho. This is why people are crazy. And somebody may hear that and say, oh, that's a harsh thing to say. But when you really, really sit and meditate on these words, you look in your own life, and when you really think about people, think about conversations that you have with people that you may not, be brutally honest with them about what they're saying to you. They may be saying to you, I want this, I want to do that. And that, them personally, them, what they do when they leave work, when they get off work, what they do, because you have that relationship with them. And in your mind, as they're telling you this, you like, I don't know when that's going to happen, because they're not doing the thing that they need to do to get to these destinations that they're counting out, right? And this is making them they're double-minded, right? Because they're expecting one thing, and then they'll come back to you later on and be down about it. Oh, I don't know why God hasn't. I'm waiting. And that's why even in church, and I know I'm jumping around, but I got so much going through my mind, right? So many different things about this topic. That's why, like in church, why do you think sometimes it's easy for preachers to tell people, yo, just come up and plant this seed and everything else is going to be all right? Because in people's mind, because they're not doing what they need to do, they're being lazy, they want God to almost be like a genie. And if you are honest with yourself, after all those seeds you've planted for this particular thing, it has not happened, because 9 times out of 10, there's something that you need to do to start that process and to get to that destination. When Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead, what did he tell them? Roll the stone away. Did he need them to roll the stone away to call Lazarus forth? No, but he had them do something, right? And that was their faith. That was their works showing their faith. Because look, they could have looked at it like, I ain't gonna play myself. I'm not gonna roll away no stone. He in there dead. But that's them showing their faith by their works. They rolled a stone away. They listened to what the Lord said. And once they rolled the stone away, what happened? He called Lazarus forth and he came out. And that's how God works in our lives, right? He's telling us to go and accompany signs to follow. You can't send me. God is like, you can't send me. Jesus is like, you cannot send me to do everything for you. I've already did what I needed to do. I've given you the power to do it now and placed everything around you to make sure that you get it done. But a lot of times, we want a quick and easy fix. That's why fast food restaurants are as big as they are, right? Because we just want to drive right around, get something really quick to eat and not have to cook or prepare anything. But if we be honest, most of those foods are no good for us and they're killing many people, right? Why? Because people want to skip the process and get right to the meal. It's just like the wilderness. The wilderness is what you have to go through before you get to the promised land, right? But a lot of people don't want to go through the wilderness, right? They're kicking and screaming. They want to go back to Egypt, because in Egypt, even though they were slaves, it was easier, right? They knew what they had to do. They got their little crumbs and they were happy with that. But it's like, no, if you want this thing that you keep talking about, keep telling everybody about, you are going to have to do something about it. But let me digress, because I'll keep on going on this topic, because like I said, it speaks to my life. And a lot of these things I've become a whole lot better at. But there was a time that this is where I was totally like, I wanted one thing, but I wasn't doing what I needed to do to get to that place. But let's read. It says, this is why people go psycho. And I promise you, we're closing out the podcast. This is why people are crazy. You're going psycho because you're saying you want one thing, but you are living a different way, and it's driving you crazy. In other words, you're doing or saying one thing, but you want something else. And this is what we've been talking about on this podcast and on our YouTube channel for the last 2-3 months. We've been talking a lot about purpose. We've been talking a lot about unlocking mental freedom. Everything starts in the mind, right? One of the most powerful things God gave us is our mind, right? As a man thinketh, so is he, right? So you have to make sure that the thoughts that you are thinking are good thoughts, right? Thoughts that are going to cause you to prosper, that's going to cause you to want to get up and do something. Sometimes people are making movies in their mind of their demise, and they can't understand why they're paralyzed and why they can't move and go forward in what it is God called them to be and do. It's because they've made this movie in their mind. They've already created their actor in this movie, and this actor is a depressed actor. This actor is somebody that he's never going to make it. This is going to be one of those stories or movies that end bad. And when you've already processed and played this movie out in your head, it paralyzes you in real life, and you find yourself not moving forward the way that you're supposed to move forward. But I wanted to share this with you guys because, for one, I love you. For two, I want you to fulfill the purpose that God has for your life. I want you to get out of a place of depression, a downness, sadness. And I'm telling you, I- if you be honest with yourself, you are playing a high percentage in what it is that you're going through. Every trials and tribulations, those come, guys. We can't get around that. Things are going to happen in our life. People we love are going to pass away. We're going to get sick at times. Things are going to happen. That's something we can't get over. That's something that we can't get by. Trials and tribulations are meant to happen in our lives, right? Because it shows us many different things about ourselves and about God, right? And who He is in our life. But as far as the things that you have the ability to do, there's no excuses for that. And God is not going to accept any excuses for that, right? You just have to get it done. You have to figure out a way, whether that's pray harder, fast, read more, get around other people, because sometimes it's even your environment. Yes, there's some people around us that we love and we want to go to that destination with them, but they're not there. You know, that they don't see that. They're comfortable where they are, and that's fine. Everybody has to live their own life, but there's so many different things that could be hindering us from getting where we need to get to. But know that I love you guys. Until the next time we hop on the podcast together, shalom.